paint a world that if technology can do more than it used to, and it does start to take away tasks, I'm not going to say jobs. Maybe we don't need to work. We're at 5 days a week, 12 hours a day. Maybe we need to work 3 days a week. And there's been work to prove out that people are more productive when they take out that function. And if you cut out some of the fat of the way we organize our companies and remove this, I'm going to call it the stupid, because there's a lot of stupid in companies that is just wasted time. Get rid of that stuff. Why do we spend that time at companies kind of becoming less energetic about what our jobs are?
We're going through something absolutely historic.
Technologies across the board are growing exponentially.
It's a disruption that's going to completely redefine the way businesses compete.
In the next decade, we're going to lose 40% of today's Fortune 500 companies.
The exponential growth of computing is continuing.
AI is nowhere near its full potential.
Whether you like it or not, that the future cannot be stopped by anyone.
Welcome back to the Future Tech and Foresight podcast. I'm your AI host, Mark Verbenkoff's deepfake avatar, and this is episode number 217. Technology has never been more powerful, yet its impact on human experience remains deeply conflicted. In this episode, the conversation explores how digital tools, remote work, and AI can either enhance or erode human connection depending on how they are designed and deployed. Drawing from decades of experience across creative industries and technology, the discussion examines why progress often leads to more work instead of less, and how this paradox shapes modern organizations. The episode dives into the post-COVID reality of remote work, highlighting how isolation, crowding, and reactive decision-making have influenced corporate digitization strategies. Rather than thoughtfully designing systems around people, many organizations default to technology-first solutions that miss deeper human needs such as purpose, balance, and belonging. The conversation challenges leaders to rethink productivity, questioning whether efficiency should mean longer hours or more meaningful outcomes. The discussion concludes with a forward-looking look at AI's role in storytelling, community insight, and human-centered business intelligence. By analyzing real stories rather than abstract metrics, AI can help organizations better understand culture, motivation, and trust. The episode ultimately argues for a future where societies are developed with technology, not managed by it, placing human experience back at the center of innovation. Now, a little bit about today's guest. Andy Citizen is a strategic creative, a unique blend of artist, analyst, scientist, and engineer who believes the most vital innovation lies in augmenting the human experience. With over 3 decades in high tech, guiding some of the world's largest companies through global cloud transformation, Andy realized the critical need to put a hand on the steering wheel of digital impact on the individual. He is now focused on improving the individual's place and influence in our contemporary digital AI world through empathetic AI. Andy is not an AI pundit. He applies emerging technology to change lives. Andy's 30 years as a data analyst and designer inform his current work, crafting strategies that use data products to better represent humans in digital technologies.
Andy, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. Looking forward to our discussion.
Mark, it's a pleasure, man. I really appreciate your podcast and your guests, so I feel honored.
Excellent. So I start off every podcast with trying to understand a little bit about how you personally got into the work that you're doing. So if there was like an event, if it was just an organic thing, if you were paid to get into this, what brought you into the work that you're doing today?
It's a great question. I started as a musician, and then I opened a restaurant, and then I saw my wife working at IBM, and I thought, that looks pretty easy. So my left-handed, right-brain man that I was, got in school, learned technology, did many years of that, ended up going around the world with it and doing some crazy things. And then I took a sabbatical, and I, from 2010 to 2020, I feel like we've lost ground from a user experience, a UI standpoint, from what tech does for us or to us. And I really wanted to look at the intersection where human meets digital and to start really putting focus on, I like to say it's kind of like I wanted the Jetsons. Sometimes it feels like Terminator. And so I'm like, how do we get a little back to where the Jetsons, right? Like what are the additional things we need around technology and how we apply it to make it better for us?
Interesting. Yeah, it is an interesting way to think about, how things have come out, let's say in the last 20 years or so since the, internet really kind of spawned on all of us. Um, there's so much discussion about how negative technology is, even though look at us, we're talking through some crazy tech that I fully don't understand, real time, able to record this and push out an interesting conversation onto the public. And yet there's still this, would you call it like a gray cloud hanging over all of our heads where the technology is, even though it's sort of appreciated, there's maybe a little bit of fear or hesitancy, especially in like what the future holds with, how we're moving into things.
Yeah, it's interesting. And this is some ancillary to a degree, but I always lived in a smaller town and they worked for big companies where I was a system integration consultant. So I was at customer sites, I was always traveling. So um of a 30 plus year career, I have spent probably 29 to 31 of those years in a hotel room, in my own house, or in a small satellite office to a bigger corporation. And because of that, I did a lot of WebEx. I did a lot of Zoom. All the technologies that have supported this. And what was weird was we would do 10 hours of calls before COVID, but no one would cut on the video. And I always was like, "What? This has video. Why don't we use video? Like, it's so boring to sit here for 10 hours talking to people." And then here comes COVID and it changes the world. And I'll end with this to say, when COVID happened, I was already using Zoom a lot. I was back in a startup or in video conferencing tools and in general. And everybody was showing up in the same space and it felt so crowded, yet we weren't on the same calls. It was like I was sharing my experience, but I was still remote, but it felt like everybody was in my space. It was a funny, odd feeling, like I was like sharing something that always just kind of been mine. And now it wasn't unique to me. And so it is weird how we the juxtaposition of technology and humans as we kind of integrate across the
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up COVID. Obviously that was the time where you were either forced to digitize or kind of die essentially as a business.
Yeah.
Have you been seeing companies still continue this digitization trend since COVID, or has there been kind of a, just back to the way things were? We don't need to focus on this as much. Let's just focus on the bottom line. What's your sense?
Well, it's interesting. I'm going to give you a little window that I had being a East Coaster, working at global headquarters out of Boston, and then a lot of Silicon Valley. So I'd be out in Silicon Valley once a month, and there was this move in that high tech company to move everything to Silicon Valley. They wanted everybody from Boston to be Silicon Valley. They wanted New York City primarily just to be a small satellite. They wanted Austin closed. They wanted Nashville closed. They wanted everything. Dallas. Think about all the oil and gas that's going on in Houston and Dallas. It was like everybody had to move to Silicon Valley. And to me, it was quite silly in that there's no water there and there's very high priced houses there and not enough room for everybody. So it seemed to work against it. But what was happening was my intake on it was they were looking at the Asian countries that were coming online, and they were very large rural countries with one or two massive cities. And they started the West Coast mentality was, well, we need to become Asia. We need to start having that one Mecca center, the Singapores, the Bangkoks, and so forth. And so they were kind of crushing down. So I felt the pressure of that in 2010, 2012, 13, 14. And then we go into COVID and we have our kind of work from home strategy. And to your question, I finally got there, is that I see it. I absolutely see everything going back in the office, which is disappointing because we went so fast to remote. I personally know I am way more creative and impactful remote for a portion of what I do. And there's aspects of what I do that I'm better in the office. And it's really role based and personality based. And I think a better model is a more flexible model. But what we see almost every one of those situations where those milestones I laid out is humans reacting instead of designing to the moment. And that's always a major disappointment for me, is to watch us ham-handedly go through these decisions instead of thinking about what it means.
Yeah, well, that seems to be part of the human experience, no? Whether individually or at a larger whole, we're always reacting rather than planning ahead of time or designing ahead of time. It's unfortunate because we have the capability to do so, and it would solve probably a significant amount of problems, but it just seems to be something that we can't get out of. Um,
As a majority, yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's funny that way. Can you maybe touch a little bit more on this like human-centered approach? You talked about a little bit at the beginning. I know that this is, a large, should we say, a philosophical aspect of what you do now, as it pertains to the digitization of companies.
Yeah, absolutely. We could get philosophical at the company, and yeah, we're a bunch of kind of big brains that love to like sit back and think about the clouds. But we have to day to day stay practical. With that said, I think it's really important to have your mission touch things that matter. We have like the first line of our North Star statement is we believe good is profitable. And so we believe that good work can be as profitable as profit work. And so we like the idea of having a reason, a meaning, a driver behind that. And so conceptually, we have the opportunity. I mean, you can paint three worlds. One world is we work like the old Apple commercial where the lady throws the sledgehammer at the screen and you're all living in a dystopian world, to a world maybe that we currently live in that is pretty hardworking. We have some new generations that are kind of rethinking the way what work life balance looks like. But generally, we're still working on a strong Protestant work ethic in America or US. And then you can paint a world that if technology can do more than it used to, and it does start to take away tasks, I'm not going to say jobs. Maybe we don't need to work 5 days a week, 12 hours a day. Maybe we need to work 3 days a week. And and there's been work to prove out that people are more productive when they take out that function. And if you cut out some of the fat of the way we organize our companies and remove this, I'm going to call it the stupid, because there's a lot of stupid in companies that is just wasted time. Get rid of that stuff. Why do we spend that time at companies kind of becoming less energetic about what our jobs are, touching all those points? And so companies can start to look at, I'm not saying wholesale changes, but start to look at the wasted time and how that impacts your employees. Because why not flip the switch on that? Why not turn our lights off a little earlier, save a little energy, whatever? I think there's opportunities for that. So humans, I think humans can easily ride on top of the technologies coming, and it can be, as I said, the Jetsons. I think there is a world where that works. The challenge to that is, how we apply other tools like capitalism and all the world competition, global markets, how we approach those other interdisciplinary, intermingled things really impacts how our daily lives are
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up the Jetsons. As since I was a little kid, the promise of technology, and this is one of the reasons that I, started to get into technology and be curious about it a little bit more, was that there was always this promise of, well, whether it's AI or robots or whatever, it will
done.
bring about a world where you have to work less and you can focus on things that you really like. I traveled a significant amount throughout my 20s, and it was awesome, and I still want to do that, but now I'm running a business, and I'm working way more hours than I thought it was possible. But the I think the promise has always been new technology will bring about 3-day work week or 4-day work week, or remote work where you're only working a couple hours a day or something like that. And it just seems to be the opposite. It seems to be that every new layer of augmentation that we get as individuals or society gets as a whole, there's more opportunity to do more, so we end up doing more
Mm.
rather than doing less. Yeah, I think many people
It
talk.
it's the mouse wheel that we love to run on, right? Like the hamster wheel. I would tell you that since the early '90s, I got out there in G technologies and I was rolling it out, and every time least every 3 years, somebody would say, "Oh, this tech, he's going to take all our jobs away." Never going to happen. There, there's, there is, there's a human connection to that is really talking about transformation. Your job is going to transform, and there will be people that will have hard times getting jobs because of what they did and who they were and how they framed their cognitive structure won't transfer very well. And so there is some truth to it, but it's really about how we transform ourselves and how we connect with those we care about. Like, you know, one of the things that's killing me right now is just how we kind of bucketized um, personas. I feel like I'm a collection of digital personas, and that's how my search engines see me. Everything I touch is, well, Andy's a kayaker, Andy's a fisherman, Andy's a this, Andy's works in resiliency, Andy cares about trees. And they put that together and they say, "This is you." I'm like, "Yes, not me. That's what you think I am. And that's what you force me to be because you keep feeding me that stuff that you think is me that has some profit motive for you." And so the noise is deafening. Like I've never seen, I think that if I look at unique moments right now, the unique moment is how distracting and disorienting the just the digital sphere that is around us, the veil. I often call it the digital veil that kind of is up in front of our faces. And I would say, like, Mark, I don't know where you live, but let's say you're in New York City, and or let's pick a smaller town. Let's say Albany, and you wanted to look up somebody that whittled wooden birds. Good luck finding that on a search engine.
Right.
Like if it's not a profit motive, it's not tied to some bigger, larger algorithmic strategy. That stuff doesn't show up anymore, which was the whole fun and uniqueness of the web in the first place, that's a disappointment, as we transfer. So these are the things that, as a guy that's had a little more time on the road than some, these are the things that jump out at me as why we need to think about the human right now.
Very interesting. So then how does your business deal with this issue?
That's a great question. And I don't remember I actually said that I took a sabbatical and started rethinking myself. And when I actually looked at AR first, augmented reality seemed like a really cool IoT was coming, but be honest, the market was kind of trash on that. I just didn't look like there was someone to engage with it. What I knew about humans and businesses, it was not going to take off. So I switched quickly a couple months into the whole AI, machine learning, algorithmic programming, and I had been selling for years and running business units, and I had not been a technical guy or I hadn't been a programmer in years. So I wanted to get back to that, learning, get into Python and all those technical things. I won't get into the details on today, but I went down into the math and the code of what it is to build deep networks and took some online classes, and I can hold my own. My son's a physicist with a PhD. I can't keep up with him in math, but I can hang with the average person on this. And I don't call myself an AI pundit. I call myself an AI practitioner, because don't ask me about which model's better than the other. I don't care. It's about what I'm deploying and how I'm changing, the products and the people that touch my products that I care about. And so, getting into AI, I went around the bush on that. I apologize, but getting back to the company, Share More Stories was coming together. It was a friend of mine who was working on this idea of collecting stories from communities, and so I came in and said, "Hey, I'm doing AI. You do this long form text thing and really look at analyzing these stories." So what we do today, jump ahead 8-10 years. What we do today is we look at a community, and maybe you're public service, public sector company or corporation, nonprofit, whatever. But let's say you have someone you need to understand. You have a big transformation coming. Like we helped one company that had 13,000 hires they had to do. And they're like, well, if we're going to hire that many people, we should look at our new hire process and let's talk to the last year's new hire group and see how we did. Right. So that's a good example of a community that's kind of becoming resonant and important to you. We look at those types of communities, that population, and then we prompt that community with a topic that matches both a connection to the person, but also to the sponsor or the customer we're working with, so that we can, new hire, we're going to ask you about your new hire process. But we didn't just talk to new hires. We talked to the senior management who'd been there for 15, 20 years, but were new hires in the past. And we shared those stories together. We kind of blended that together. What we do in the product, though, once we have these stories come in, and which is kind of between qualitative and quantitative. Quantitative are net promoter score type stuff, where you're looking at thousands and tens of thousands of clicks. Quantitative is where you're seeing a focus group or by people and you're interviewing. We kind of web scale this idea through stories. So if you kept collecting 3 to 5 pages of a story from somebody, it's hard for them to kind of keep a rant going, to kind of manipulate it. What happens normally when we tell stories, we go inside ourselves and we start to pull against the sediment of our memories, and we stick this back together. It's probably not exactly true, to be honest, when we tell a story. It's our current version of that story, but it's heartfelt. And so people bring that forward. Maybe it's about being a middle-aged woman and taking care of her family, which we did this project of that. We also did minority tourism in an old plantation state of Virginia. And, these kinds of conversations, and bringing those stories forward to this community, this collective of codex of content, is first, importantly, therapeutic to the person telling the story. It gives voice to people that might not have heard that story. And we find, surprisingly, like almost all of our customers, our participants, talk about how they really need to tell that story. They really appreciate the opportunity, those kinds of things. So moving forward into using those stories, we use emotive scores or attitudinal scores. I have a psychology undergrad. I don't think that qualifies me, but I spent the first year and a half as we built out this product, kind of looking at the psychological case log of psychology case log we had for 100, 150 years of, Myers-Briggs, Big Three, all these kinds of things that we've done to measure humans and cognitive thinking and so forth, and looked at ways that we could label and train against that kind of content. We don't create a personality, the person telling a story, but we do start to build a personality of the community that all these collective stories come together around. So we'll track joy, anxiety, self-transcendence, activity level, need for structure, need for, I'll let that one go. I tripped over my going through 50 of them in my head. I got
Sure, I get it.
but we track all those scores, and then we use AI to look for patterns in that complexity. So where is there similarities? Where's systemic things? Where are things that we can't see with human eye? And so, with that said, we also use the quotes and the stories to help our customers connect, because sometimes it's surprisingly, when we do these stories, our customers are like, "Oh my God, that's a story." We're like, "Well, that's what we say. We're like stories." But it hits them. It hits them so hard when they see people willing to share their personal experiences with these customers. It kind of changes everybody, and that's kind of the magic that you can't program.
Mm. So, is the real benefit here of like your clients understanding the internal social I'm also tripping up over my words here. Understanding themselves as a community, as a business better in order to, I don't know, market themselves to the potential clients, or is it to help like internal processes and the culture of the let's say a business better? Where's the true value in understanding this?
Yeah, I think one of the well, first off, I should say we've spent 8 years trying to get everybody to understand what we do. Everybody's always super interested, but then it's like, what is this? We don't have a budget for this. What is this? And so we're finally getting there, because what you're seeing is chief experience officers, CMOs are showing up, and they're absolutely trying to connect with their communities in ways. And so one of the ways I've started framing this is we help you understand the questions you should be asking. We, as companies, we ask a lot of questions on Likert scales, I hate it, I love it. all sorts of survey data that goes out there. But what's bad about that is those are all predefined questions. They're all based off the assumptions and the biases that you're already walking into the conversation with. And what stories do is let you frame it a little bit. And then the person starts talking and 500 people talk about it. You're like, oh my God, I would have never asked about that. But that's what really matters, you know? So it kind of gets you to what you should be asking, what you should be caring about. And you don't really, it's fuzzy in a way that you don't know where it's going to end up. And that's the magic, is like we're able to and we use generative AI too. We have some custom generative AI tools that just work with our data. And what's fun in that space, and we'll use that early. Like we'll be collecting stories a week in. I'll start using it. Just check trending. Are we too biased in certain ways? Are we getting too much of a demographic? Or how's the scoring looking? Is there something special about this audience? And 30, 40 minutes in, I always will ask, okay, I've asked you a lot of questions, but since you've read this data, you've looked at this data, what is important in the data that I didn't ask you? And almost every time, it's 4 or 5 or 8 things, this, and now I'll know a couple. There'll be 1 or 2 that I'm like, oh, wow, I wouldn't have never thought to ask that, or I didn't gain that perspective in the way I was hitting it. So that's part of the value of AI, is how creatively can you apply it to the data that you're working with. I'll take a break. I don't know if I hit all your question here, but me, I'll keep going.
Sure. No. That's really interesting. So you were talking about like how some of your clients like came up with like, oh, I'd never thought about that. So I know it's always a difficult thing to ask for like specific examples, but are there any specific examples that you can share where like an unexpected pattern was undiscovered, or like something that was unexpected is maybe the best term here.
No, I would love to. I'll tell you about one. I'll answer your question directly this time instead of beating around the bush. I'm left-handed, and I've been told I always go through the back door before I get the front door. I'm going to go through the front door this time, and say, well, there was a great example of this the other day. We're working with the YMCA, and the YMCA has this brilliant perspective that is the well-being of their staff and employees leads to the success and happiness of their customers. And so it's an inside-out kind of mentality, build the core. It's almost like a strength training program. Maybe that's where it came from. But brilliant and lovely and altruistic and so forth. And one of the things that came from the generative study work that I was doing, I got around to asking that question: what didn't I ask about? What do you see that's important? And it said it in a set of words that I'm not going to use, but I'm going to put it in a set of words so you'll get it. And that was that the altruism, the ability to give and to be altruistic in a volunteer function is part of their income. It's part of the benefit of the job. That this population, and this is what's interesting when we've studied other groups. Like if you just study a corporation that's just kind of normal corporate environment, you'll see altruism and achievement on kind of a negative correlation, because they, if someone's really heartfelt and compassionate, they're not always the achiever, comes in and gets it done and gets the management job, right? But in this case, the people that were leading the success, those two were tracking positively correlated. And I've never seen it before, which made me think, hey, why you got something going right there? I don't know what it is about what you guys are doing, but this is really cool, right? It's a very thoughtful space. So that would be an example of that. One short other one was, we did this study with Listen Ventures, who looked at the middle-aged woman, and it was kind of like, how do we help this person have a voice and connect with all the products out there? And you think about it, there's nobody more pivotal to American society than a middle-aged woman. They're taking care of the older family, the generation before, the generation after, the pets, the husband, getting a job, getting it all done. There's nobody working harder than the American female in their 40s. So I knew it was going to be a powerful set of stories that came in, and it was profound. These were, grab a tissue kind of stories, but also just like Superman stories, Superwoman stories, I should say. And what came from that was just this profound understanding from all of us that it's kind of like you get it, well, of course, it's middle-aged women, it's tough. Then you read the stories, you're like, okay, I'm connected to the level that I couldn't have been without hearing that content, right? So that it's something inside, I guess it's an energy and so forth that's kind of beyond just the intellectual understanding of something. And
Mm.
I'll stop there.
Okay. So if let's move towards the future here a little bit. So
Yes.
say with your techniques, with your company, you're able to draw out these uh unexpected, like, core understandings of certain communities. How is this going to be, potentially, hopefully, changing tech, maybe companies, to a more kind of human-centered approach?
That's a great question. And I used to have a saying, and we never lived up to it. We should develop societies and manage technologies, and instead we develop technologies and manage societies, and so we have it completely backwards. And I don't have a lot of faith that humanity fixes that in my lifetime. Um, with that said, there is profit in this, and profit motive is a brilliant tool set for any of us that want to make profit, but also kind of change the world a little bit. So I do believe human experience matters, and the more we apply digital to control the mechanisms in marketing and sales and product choices and product development, product design, and everything that we're doing, customer service, we're going to continually get stretched a little further from a human connection. And we're all, and if you're executive of very Fortune 100, you still have a desire to connect to people. It's not like you're inhuman. I'm not saying you are. But we all feel that disorientation. And I think everybody has a natural goodness when they actually get a chance to connect. So I think it's a lot about, um, I think localization is really important. And I hope that technology will start to develop localization. We have, every time we use a credit card, 3% of our local community money goes to San Francisco, New York, wherever it's going, Switzerland. And so is intellectual property, and so is emotionality. Like, well, a lot of our shared conversations are starting to get broken up and sucked into centralization and data centers that use up too much water, as they talked about. But anyway, I I'd like to see us get more localized, and I hope what this does, and you see it now in kind of counterculture, which is becoming culture. A lot of biking, hiking, kayaking trips, a lot of social groups that are all about using your feet, not your brain or your fingers. And that is just a deep desire to connect back with us humans. And so that's profitable. If that's a demand out there, I think our best product we're creating is us right now. So why don't we make a better version of us and be a little more demanding of what we will be? So
Mm.
those are some things that I hope are attributes of new movements that will become.
So is this, I guess, deeply connected then to how organizations might redefine success or add on another metric of success in this human-focused, more localized way of thinking and acting?
Absolutely. Stop assuming you know who you're talking to. Spend a little money on the why and the who, and you will be surprised. In my version of the study of that, my personal journey that we've talked about today, I've realized how powerful that is. It is concentrated dynamite. Like, this stuff is super energy, and anybody that invests a little in it will gain a lot from it. And it's a good complement to all the metrics and MPSs and everything else that we're doing already. It's a nice chaser for that. It's a nice qualification for why you're doing what you're doing. And yeah, I think we're going to see more and more. We're already seeing it. We're already seeing the interest in it, where people are starting to do projects against it. And I hope you'll see us in lights, and that'll also prove all of that out.
How about marketing? Because, we started off talking about social media, which is deeply connected to the marketing realm, if you will. Is what you're doing potentially going to reshape certain marketing approaches, or maybe another way of asking is like how was your approach changing marketing for the clients that you're working with?
Well, it's interesting that this era is the marketing era. I might be coining that. Charleston are said, but which is usually when it becomes the era, it's usually the thing you broke. Um, However, I do think marketing is really important. But why is it important? It's because of what I was saying. The locality's been kind of crunched down to a little 9-inch, 7-inch screen that we look at all the time. So if there is a screen that can be shared, just like the Super Bowl, only so many people can play in the Super Bowl, right? And if there's billions of us, there's a lot of lost people on the algorithmic path to that. And so marketing becomes very high demand to get to that mainstream and so not surprising, marketing's become everything, right? So, I think we absolutely impact marketing. That's the whole point, is like, if you're trying to put forth a message, why are you putting it forth, and who do you want to hear it? And are they going to hear it like in a way that it sounds like their sister told it to them? Or is it going to sound like that commercial they just shoved in on a show that I'm already paying for the streaming and now I'm listening to commercials, because, hey, somebody need to make some more profit they didn't care about, right? Like there's experience levels that we're all experiencing right now. And a lot of it seems to be, hey, I can't create anything new and interesting. So why don't I just squeeze a little more profit out of the people we have? And so I think those that don't want to be on that strategy, which I think is a long-term losing strategy. I hope, the power of the dollar will come together a little more than we do, both of our dollars a little more than we do right now. Um, that becomes why what we're talking about here, human experience, matters. If you actually care about people, people will know you care. It's pretty obvious when you care about somebody, if your marketing is directed at what they want to hear and what they need, what they need from you. I think that's a big piece I haven't said. This is a lot about telling you what they need from you. And you can't get that just alone from monkey clicks and stats from your webcams.
Yeah, that might be a pivotal aspect here. It's, what it is that you're doing enables kind of a deeper understanding of the audience that you want to whether market with or connect with. It's as you said, these buckets, these persona that whether it's Facebook or otherwise are creating of you. It might not be perfect, because if they're feeding you things, you might just be curious in things or accidentally click on things. And then the persona of you is maybe not as, shall we say, correct as it could be. So you're being fed a bunch of random stuff that isn't relevant for you.
I don't know about you, but like my Facebook is one persona, my Reddit's another persona, my Instagram's another. I'm hiding who I am from you because I'm tired of you trying to. You don't ever use it in my bit, right? So my shit lets you know who I am. That's a bad relationship. It might work right now. It might be profitable to be in that space, but I think we're immature about this. Like, I know social doesn't feel immature, but I think it's extremely immature. It doesn't seem like a working function of our society. And I hope that we're going to see that evolve. And as the Gen Zers take over more jobs and the baby boomers go off, I think you're going to see transitions there. I hope.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Interesting.
not a baby boomer. I'm Gen X. But
You're Gen X.
don't put me in that bucket.
Andy, any other things that I haven't asked you that you think would be relevant and interesting for this conversation?
Yeah, I'm gonna flip the coin on this and say you listen to a lot of smart people. What do you want to see? What's one thing you'd like to see in the next 10 or 20 years happen that isn't quite on the cusp yet?
Yeah, there's too many things rattling around. I think, well, maybe this is a little bit biased and selfish, but I think a general, like an increased awareness of what's actually happening, right?
Mhm.
So again, a little bit biased. I've had so many experts come onto this podcast talk about just crazy and wild things that are coming about. And it just seems like whenever I talk to people that aren't involved in tech, or they're for lack of a better term, the average person, when they're told about biocomputing or not alien, animal human hybrids, right? It's just like it's as if none of these things have ever come across their consciousness before, and which is great. It's exciting, but when there are things like what we've been talking about today, or other types of technologies that are going to be impacting them directly, one of the things that I talk about all the time, and many guests talk about, is start using AI, whether it's ChatGPT, Perplexity Cloud, etc., so that you become competent with it, so that when one of these tools becomes, if it happens, a dominant player, you're at least aware of how to use it, so that you can still be employed in the next 10 to 15 years. I know lots of people that don't touch this thing, and I'm like, oof, like it's how are you going to function in the marketplace in 10 years? So a little bit of a ramble on my side as well, but I think generally speaking, it's awareness of not just the technologies that are coming out, but the impacts on your lives that's coming out.
Yeah, I think critical thinking it seems like at an all-time low right now. And it's weird because it's such a technically sophisticated world we live in that it feels too much like Wall-E. Like Wall-E shouldn't have been that true that fast. But the sitting on the couch with the mobile couch, it feels like we're heading that way with a portion. And so I love what you're saying. I think it's true. It's like I do believe there's a lost, not a generation, but there's a lost population that is falling further and further from a connection. It's both, they don't understand how they're being played on social, but they also just don't understand all the moving parts anymore. And so that is creating a lot of the fear that's driving a lot of crazy right now too. And so I'd love to see critical thinking take a win. It's been sliding, and it's so important in our scheme.
Yeah. No, essential, I would say.
Yes.
Andy, I'll have your website and LinkedIn up on the show notes. Are there any other places that you and your team are active and you want people to follow and reach out?
Yeah, I mean, sure, but my last name is Citizen, Sitison. If you find that, it's me or my family. Like, there's only so many of us. So, just search it. That's one thing you can put in a search engine and still find, because I guess there's some profit mode behind it. I don't know. Feel free to find us. We're on the standard socials, and, out on the podcast feed, which is great to get time. And it's so important to our invigorating who we are and getting time with you and smart people like yourself. And so I look forward to, more conversations, and look forward to who you talk to next.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for your time and insights, Andy. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you too.
Well, thanks for listening to this week's Future Tech and Foresight podcast. If you like what you've heard here, there are, of course, a number of ways that you can support the podcast. The best way would be to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or give a rating on Spotify, which you can find a step-by-step explanation for on the futuretechandforesight.com website. Alternatively, feel free to leave a comment either on the episode show notes or the YouTube channel, where you can see video recordings of the interviews. And finally, if you are part of an organization that is aware of the disruptive and transformational impact that emerging and future technologies will bring and want to know more, please get in touch to hear about the strategic foresight services that we offer and how we can help future-proof your organization and take advantage of the phenomenal opportunities available to survive and thrive in the future.
A lot of future-shocked people and future-shocked institutions in our society are simply overwhelmed.
Once there is superintelligence, the fate of humanity may depend on what the superintelligence does.
Science fact is catching up to science fiction.
The first truly intelligent machine will be the last invention that humanity needs to make.
The only scarcity that will exist in the future is that which we decide to create ourselves as humans.
Within a 10-year design revolution, we can have all humanity living the highest standard living anybody's ever known.
Progress is accelerating at an exponential pace, and it's going to reach a point where
progress is so fast, it's going to be a singularity.
We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens.
Every single headline points to the birth pangs of a Type 1 civilization.